Entering the Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience presented by Underdog Week 3 Fantasy Football Rankings by position. If you're looking who to start, who to sit, I can make it easy for you. You take the guy who is higher in the rankings than the guy who is lower in the rankings, and you should be on your way. Not a guarantee, however. If you're looking for the list itself, that gets updated all throughout the week when information changes. After players play, they get taken out. That is down in the description right now. Additionally, you can find it on ProFootballNetwork.com as of Wednesday evening, but the newsletter will always have it first. It also has the updated injury report when all new news occurs. It will be in there. So subscribe to it. It's free. It'll get sent to you. Then you can bookmark it and check back as the week goes along. I'm still doing the shorts in the morning on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then I'll have the full rankings update show on the Pat Mayo Experience feed on Saturday morning or afternoon once we get the settled information from the late Friday injury report to make sure that the updated rankings are as up to date as possible and as accurate as possible for you good people out there. If you're looking for Jake, again, he's on the Monday show. We power rank the teams, and then we go team by team and talk about each of their fantasy players, who we project to be better, sell highs, buy lows, who you can trade for, and the projections going forward and how we anticipate the players playing every single week. It's a longer show. I think it's a more informative show than Jake going back and forth with myself trying to argue who's number 8 and who's number 10 when you're going to start the same two guys anyway. So, that's the preamble. Sub to the network. We're in the race for the 50K, and smash the like while you're here. Let's start with the running back injury report for week number 3. Right now, we have Joe Mixon as questionable. I have him in the rankings. Ditto with Rachaad White. We're going to have to see the practice reports on both of them. Ditto for Kenneth Walker. I have him out of the rankings right now, and Zach Charbonnet in, who played the most snaps of any running back for his team in week number 2 against the Patriots. Even if Walker plays, he won't be ranked as highly as he normally is. This was a 2-week injury for him a year ago, the oblique, so his risk for re-aggravation is actually pretty high even if he comes back. I would expect him to sit against the Dolphins. This is a late game at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, so he might not, unless he's ruled out before, hopefully we know that, or he's ruled in before, but if he's still questionable or game time decision, you're going to have a real decision on your hands to make if we don't know by the 11:30 a.m. active and inactive time. Raheem Mostert, I also have is out right now in that same game. We'll see the practice report on him. Tank Bigsby is expected to be in week 3. Lucky Pierre Strong for the Browns is expected to be out. Jeff Wilson, who knows with his oblique injury, probably going to keep him out another week because it was only sustained last Thursday night. Isaiah Pacheco out 6 to 8 to 12 weeks. Who knows? Marshawn Lloyd was placed on IR, so Emmanuel Wilson will be the primary backup to Josh Jacobs in Tennessee for the Packers this week, and obviously Christian McCaffrey was placed on injured reserve. So that is what you need to know going forward. Again, that will all be updated. That cheat sheet itself will be updated in the newsletter rankings, which you can again find down in the description and comment section. You can subscribe to it for free as well. Set yourself a bookmark on that one. The rankings for the week at running back start off with Jordan Mason. No Deebo Samuel for a while, so he's not even going to lose carries to him at this point. And it's a pretty spicy matchup against a very depleted Rams roster. So it's Mason, Jonathan Taylor, Devin Achane, or Achane, as he prefers to be called, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, Kyron Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Josh Jacobs inside the top 10. The Titans are more difficult to run on than the Colts. We've seen the Colts get lit up on the ground now 2 weeks in a row. First by Joe Mixon, then by Josh Jacobs, where it's kind of gone the other way for the Tennessee Titans. They've been very stout against the run. The Jets were able to do a little, their running backs were able to do a little bit, but a lot of that was through the air, don't forget. So it's a situation right now when we're thinking about how Jacobs is going to perform in this game against Tennessee that, although he might have the volume that makes him a top 10 running back, the efficiency that we've seen through 2 games from him may not quite be there, hence why he's not as high. I completely swung and missed on Alvin Kamara last week. Bad week to do that. If you were playing on DraftKings, you needed to have him and his 4 touchdowns to go along with it. I love these Alvin Kamara giant regression to the mean touchdown games, because there's games where, you project him out based on the carries that he gets, the opportunity that he has inside the 20, inside the red zone, on the goal line, and how the Saints normally try to manufacture touches down there, that a lot of the time his expected touchdown rate is like 0.9 or 1.1 when he scores 0. It happens all the time. And then this is very similar to, I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago in week 16 or 17 when he scored 6 touchdowns in a game. So when they come in bulk. I just didn't expect the Saints to absolutely wax the Cowboys. That's where they came in. And what we've seen historically from the Saints is if they fall behind, they tend to run the ball less. Although that's great for PPR. These are half-point PPR rankings. So the actual value of the catches for Kamara wasn't going to be there. I was just dead wrong. Happens all the time. Hopefully you still played him and didn't listen to me. That was one of the guys who was lower in the rankings you probably should have played than everyone else who was in the rankings. But when you have to list the guys in order, you have to make a stand. You're going to get it wrong a lot of the time, actually. I'd like to say like rarely, but no, it happens that you misrank people. That's how it goes. Anyway, if you want to run your own projections, by the way, runthesims.com makes that super easy for you if you're interested in that kind of thing. If not, we can get to the rest of the rankings. James Conner comes in at number 11 in that game against the Lions. James Cook and Zach Charbonnet, again, without Kenneth Walker in. Etienne, Ramondre Stevenson at 16 on Thursday night against the Jets. You can make a case for him being higher in the rankings right now because the Jets' run defense, frankly, has not been all that good, and the Patriots' rush offense has been very good. The issue is going to be is they're 6.5-point dogs. Now, they've been underdogs in both games that they've played. They beat Cincinnati outright. They played a tight game with Seattle that ended up going to overtime. They've been able to continue to pound the ball as much as possible, hence why Ramondre has been so good. The issue ends up becoming with Ramondre is when your team total is so low off the hop, it's just hard to really have that breakthrough game, at least with the Saints last week. Well, they weren't projected for a ton of points. They were projected for well more than the Patriots were, even as sizable underdogs in that matchup. When you think you're probably going to max out at 20, 23 points, and a lot of those are probably going to be field goals to begin with, what's the real upside for Ramondre? It's the same thing with Derrick Henry, who comes after him in the rankings right now at number 17. Like, he's not involved in the passing game. Yes, he is the goal line back. This we know over J.K. Dobbins at the moment, but Lamar is still going to steal from him. They love using like Patrick Ricard in a stupid play near the goal line as well. But right now, what's the upside of Derrick Henry? It's 2 touchdowns. That's pretty difficult to predict that he's going to score 2 touchdowns in a game, even against Dallas, which we saw last week that the Saints had no problem with him. We'll see what the Ravens are able to do, albeit the Saints, at least through 2 games, have a much superior offensive line to what Baltimore is rolling out at the moment. But if Derrick Henry doesn't score 2 touchdowns, what are you getting? 18 carries for 85 yards and a touchdown. That's great. That makes him probably number 12 instead of number 17 in the rankings. If he scores 2 touchdowns, he's probably not even, I wouldn't say he's probably not even a top 5 running back for the week, but he's like a fringy top 5 running back without the periphery stuff, like just being able to pile up 3 catches for 30 yards and adding on that way, and knowing that he can be scripted out of games. If Dallas jumps up, we're going to see a lot more of J.K. Dobbins. So yes, his upside is higher than this, but only marginally so, and he does have more downside. Fortunately, he's on pace to score a touchdown in every single game, and that is very helpful. And we're almost at that cutoff point with players right now of, are they must-starts, are they not must-starts? Derrick Henry is at the, you could have 3 running backs theoretically that are better than him, or at least 2, that's for sure. But for most leagues, flex at worst, probably a running back 2 for you right now with Derrick Henry on the Ravens. Joe Mixon I have slightly after him. So Mixon, Zach Moss at 19, Brian Robinson at number 20, David Montgomery at 21 is probably the cutoff of guys you're going to start this week. It's a pretty decent matchup for Brian Robinson against Tampa. Maybe it ends up becoming an Eckler game because they're 7.5-point underdogs, 8-point underdogs against Cincinnati. But as we've seen so far, you can run on Cincinnati a little bit, and the primary rusher for the Commanders right now is Brian Robinson. He's also getting the goal line touches as well, or at least a lot of touches inside the 5-yard line. Of course, like Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels is going to be there to take away opportunities, carries, yardage, and potential touchdowns from his as well. So that's why he ranks so lowly amongst these running back 2s. The bigger one for me is Joe Mixon at number 18 right now. Rushed all over the Colts, then he got banged up. He has a mid to high ankle sprain. I haven't projected as playing in. That's at least the rumors coming out of Houston right now. Even D'Amico Ryans has said that probably one of Mixon or Dameon Pierce is going to play. So if Mixon doesn't go and Pierce plays, I would expect Pierce to be the lead, even coming off the hamstring injury, over Cam Akers. Now, if both of them sit, Cam Akers is likely to be the guy against Minnesota. Where would that rank Cam Akers? probably in the Aaron Jones, Zamir White category, 23, 24, 25 in the running back rankings. The Goon, Dare, will end up doing all of the receiving game work for Houston if that's the case. If it's just Pierce and no Mixon, it's probably the same spot anyway, probably a little bit lower, probably in the J.K. Dobbins 25, 26, 27 type range, because I would assume that coming off the hamstring injury, it wouldn't be the full workload for Pierce. He would split with Akers. With Mixon, I just worry about the re-aggravation of the injury to begin with, that he's not going to be 100%. Minnesota's defense has been a lot better than I think that, frankly, any of us expected them to be. You can still run on them easier than you can pass on them right now because there's a lot of blood dumps that are available against Brian Flores' defenses because he just blitzes so often. He just does a very good job of disguising those blitzes and blitzing from a lot of different angles that can throw quarterbacks for a loop and can throw running backs, especially in pass protection, for a loop as well. But I think if Mixon plays, you do play him at number 18. If you want to go with Zach Moss at 19 over Joe Mixon in this game against Washington, as a sieve defense, I couldn't blame you for that. That is a Monday night game too, however. And the big thing to look at of why Moss is playing so much more than Chase Brown. I know that everyone loved Chase Brown coming into the year. Moss isn't great, but he's on the field because he is the one who's working in pass protection with Joe Burrow. I almost said Joe Mixon. Probably not Joe Mixon on his former team playing quarterback. Now, they let him go to let Joe Burrow. Eminem up there playing quarterback. But he's working in pass protection far more than Chase Brown. We thought that Chase Brown would become the better receiver, and he will run routes out of the backfield. But when it comes to overall pass protection and getting those leak out, just dump offs where you chip and then you go out, Zach Moss has been on the field primarily for the Bengals by a pretty substantial rate, playing almost 9 times as many passing snaps right now as Chase Brown, and he's probably going to be the goal line back for the Browns or for the Bengals, and that's what we thought anyway, so that's why Zach Moss ranks inside the top 20 right now. Now we get to this next level, and it starts with Rachaad White. Rachaad White has a groin injury, so I don't know how effective he's going to be in this game to begin with, plus the risk of re-aggravation. Now, if he practices in full on Thursday and Friday, then I will bump him up in the rankings. But I've also moved Bucky Irving up in the rankings as well to number 35, and if we hear bad reports about White throughout the course of the week, Irving is going to go up into the same range of 20, 23, 24, 25 based on volume opportunity in a really nice matchup against Denver. Denver's been pretty good against the run so far, but not great by any means. There have been better rush defenses out there. So with Rachaad White, he is still the lead at the moment, but you're probably looking at more of a 60-40 split between him and Irving as long as he continues to work in passing downs, which we have seen, and continue to touch the ball most of the time inside the 20, then he's going to be good to go, but still a lower end running back too for the week with the questionable tag and that groin injury coming into the week. You have Zamir White, who's like the least efficient runner in all of football, like him or DeAndre Swift. It's one of the two, but it's against the Panthers. He's probably going to get the majority of the touches out of the backfield. It's a volume play at best. Aaron Jones, he's still splitting. He is on the better end of the split with Ty Chandler, but it's against Houston, and Houston's defense has been pretty good so far this season. So again, on the lower end, J.K. Dobbins, he's splitting almost down the middle with Gus Edwards. However, he has just been so much better than Gus Edwards. But going against the Steelers is a little bit different than going against the Raiders and Panthers the first 2 weeks. So matchup dependent. He is running back number 25 for the week. DeAndre Swift just blows, but they keep giving him carries. So you have to have him ahead of some people at this point. If you can't get it going this week, it's going to be a major problem going up against the Colts, who, as I mentioned before, everyone has run over so far this year. So I'm giving him one last shot. If he can't do it this week, listen, you're probably not going to drop him because he gets so many carries. If you need to plug him in, he's probably good for like 5 points a week. But if he can't find the end zone here or at least manage like over 4 yards a carry, it's curtains for DeAndre Swift in Chicago and probably that offense in general. So Carson Steele, I have at number 27. He's the highest ranked Kansas City Chief running back. I do think that he's going to work in short yardage situations, which makes his... Because the Chiefs score so many points, makes his floor a little bit higher. We could be looking at 10 carries for 30 yards and a touchdown in this game. I mean, it could be a lot more. He could be the lead back and get 20 carries against the Falcons, for all I know. I mean, I'm not from the future. I don't know these things. But if I was going to rate it out that way, P. Ryan I would have a little bit farther back because the Chiefs, as favorites, will use P. Ryan. Probably not that much on the ground. They'll use him in pass protection and on passing downs. But the touchdown opportunity probably filters through Carson Steele. He's just rated this low because I have no idea idea. I wouldn't bank my week on Carson Steele being awesome here. Kareem Hunt was signed to the practice squad by the Chiefs. No idea when he's going to work into the rotation, but he obviously knows most of this playbook, having played for the Chiefs in the past with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And don't forget that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is eligible to come off of injured reserve or the PUP list or wherever the hell he's on in week 5. Whether he returns or not, I don't know. But you could be looking at a 4-man backfield here. That's just not a fun one to invest in. It's like old school Ravens backfields where you had J.K. Dobbins, Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, and Justin Forsett. And it'd always be the guy you didn't play would be the one who would end up going off in the game. Pretty decent matchup against the Falcons, so there is upside to be had. But I would take the guy who's most likely to score a touchdown. And in my mind, in week 3, that's Carson Steele in the Chiefs backfield. After him, Chuba Hubbard, who I think is going to be a little bit better with Andy Dalton, and he played a lot more than Miles Sanders when the game wasn't completely out of reach in the first half against the Chargers a week ago. Najee at number 29. It's a tougher matchup for the Steelers this time around, and Najee really hasn't done all that much so far this season. This is probably the toughest matchup they've had, with the Chargers defense looking excellent so far this season. Jerome Ford at number 30, he lost a ton of snaps to Donta Foreman last week. I still like him more in the receiving game. Obviously, Foreman might end up outscoring him on first and second down, but it's the money downs, the passing downs, the 2-minute drills where that's really going to come in handy. If I knew that Foreman was going to have all of the goal line touches for the Browns and that Deshaun Watson wasn't simply going to steal his touchdowns, he would probably be higher than Jerome Ford. But what we saw in week 2 was exactly that. Watson stole opportunities from Donta Foreman, then he stole the touchdown from Donta Foreman. Foreman's fine. He's a guy you could play against a weak Giants defense this week. If you're taking a flyer, I would still stick with Jerome Ford. I have Foreman at number 39. After Ford, Javonte Williams, then Devin Singletary against the Browns in Cleveland. Not a great matchup. Samaje Perine. Then we're into Zeke, Bucky Irving, Tajay Spears, who is questionable to play this week. He's probably going to play, but I really like Pollard in this game against the Packers. We've been seeing first and second down work from him. Pollard has looked good so far this season. He looks all the way back healthy from that injury at the end of 2 seasons ago, which really did seem to limit him last year. And if Spears is already gimped up to begin the week, you're probably going to see more touches for Tony Pollard. One of my favorite underdog plays last week was the over on Tony Pollard carries. If it's set at 13.5, 14.5 again, I'm going over on that number. So simply through volume, Pollard is going to be pretty high. So after Spears, who's still going to play the passing downs, presumably, although Pollard might get more of those now, Rico, Gus Edwards, Donta Foreman, Jaylen Warren, Austin Eckler, Miles Sanders, Alexander Madison, Braylon Allen. Allen and Justice Hill could both be higher depending on how you think both those games go. Listen, Braylon Allen played very few snaps compared to Breece Hall. Breece Hall got the higher end touches, just Allen was able to manufacture touchdowns with the touches that he has. I do think that they're using him how they probably plan to use Malachi Corley, or at least how they thought they were going to use him, but Allen just has a better rapport with Aaron Rodgers right now. We're seeing Jets offensive sets where 2 running backs are on the field at the same time. That's great news for the prospects of Braylon Allen. The Patriots defense is tough, and it's hard to replicate 2 touchdowns again, and that's how you derive all your values, hence why he's down right now in the rankings. Justice Hill, Antonio Gibson, Jalen Wright, Emmanuel Wilson, Algier, and Jaleel McLaughlin at number 50, who was essentially phased out of the Broncos offense last week. Maybe he gets more involved in the passing game, being big dogs against Tampa Bay again this week, but I don't really want to invest anything in the Denver offense right now. There's not a whole lot of points to go around. Emmanuel Wilson will probably get more touches than you suspect with Marshawn Lloyd being on injured reserve. He will work as the primary backup, but between the pecking order, I would still think it goes Josh Jacobs, Malik Willis, and then Emmanuel Wilson. And you'll still see Jaden Reed, even with his calf or hamstring or whatever the hell he's dealing with, he was dealing with it last week too, get somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 5 carries himself, just more to take away from Wilson. And we know all the valuable touches are not going to go to him. So there's very little upside to be had in that circumstance. A few years back, the irons were the best part of my golf game. But after a swing change about 2.5 years ago, my driver's an absolute weapon at this point, but all of a sudden I couldn't hit my long irons, and even some of my short irons just were not going on the same trajectory that I always wanted them to, or at least that they used to do. So when I heard how the new PXG Black Ops irons can dramatically improve my game, of course I had to give them a try. Anything to improve my golf game. So I called up PXG and I got my current irons and I took the PXG Irons Challenge and it has been amazing. The consistency off the club face is unparalleled to any club that I have ever used. Best thing about these irons is because I feel so comfortable that I'm gonna hit the sweet spot on them, I can control the club face, the high, the low, the cut, the draw, no problem. And the new PXG Black Ops irons are the game improvement missile launchers that are going to give you explosive distance, and it's going to feel softer than a baby bunny. The new Black Ops irons are incredibly easy to hit and maximize performance and fun, because getting better is fun. Oh, and they're only $149.99 a stick. That's a great price for a great golf iron. Take the PXG Irons Challenge. It's a ton of fun, and if PXG's new Black Ops irons don't outperform your current irons by delivering either more distance or tighter dispersion, that means better accuracy, during your fitting, you'll get a $100 MasterCard rewards card. Hurry! This offer ends October 7th. Book your fitting today at pxg.com. That's pxg.com. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. If you're watching this before Thursday Night Football, I got an underdog entry for you to win 5.5 times your money. Additionally, if you do not have an underdog account as of yet, if you use code Mayo right now, you will unlock 2 free picks. One of them is for everyone. CeeDee Lamb this weekend over under half a yard. You can use that one on any entry you want. But if you're a new sign up right now using code Mayo for Thursday Night Football, you will get an Aaron Rodgers free pick as well, over under half a yard, total yards, rushing, passing, receiving for Aaron Rodgers. It's free money. You might as well do it, and code Mayo gets you a deposit bonus of up to $1,000 as well. And if you want to play this entry, it is down in the description. You can just tail along, and all of that stuff will be baked into it. The deposit bonus of the up to, the Aaron Rodgers free pick as well. Using code Mayo, if you just want to go download it, you can use the link in the description. But the 3 that I'm going with, I just mentioned Ramondre Stevenson. You can run on the Jets. Touchdown upside, I'm not worried about that in this circumstance, so I am going higher than 65.5 rushing yards. KJ Osborne lowers are doing great. The algorithm is just a bit off on KJ Osborne right now because he's playing so many snaps, but seeing so few targets that maybe one of these days he's going to eclipse 20 yards. I just don't see it happening against the Jets, or the fact that he gets like 2 targets a game despite running every route and being on the field. He is primarily asked to be out there to block on rushing downs, so it actually correlates. Stevenson more on the ground, Osborne lower through the air, goes hand in hand. And then Legatron, Greg Zuerlein, more than 1.5 field goals in this game. We know that you can move the ball on the Patriots. They're a good bend but don't break defense, so that's where I'm going for 5.5 times your money on Underdog Fantasy. Use code Mayo right now, okay? Wide receiver injuries heading into week number 3. Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, they still need to practice, but both are expected to be in come Sunday. T. Higgins, and that hamstring injury that caused him to miss the first 2 weeks, could return, but that's Monday Night Football, so we might not know until Saturday with him and how that practice report goes. Because remember, Monday Night Football, Friday isn't the key day, Saturday is the key day. Hopefully, I'll be able to mention that and have the actual official report in the Saturday update show of the rankings. Please subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast and subscribe to Mayo Media Network while you're here and get us to 50K and smash the like. If you're looking for the rankings, once again, they're down in the description right now. Devon Vale, who knows? You don't really care anyway about what he's up to. Jordan Addison could be back this week with the ankle injury. I do not have him in the rankings right now. I do have Keenan Allen in. It looked like he was close to playing last week. He should be able to play this week. Josh Downs was close last week, so I would expect him to be in for the Colts this time around, which means Pierce will probably stay on the field. A.D. Mitchell probably goes back to the bench or rotates in with Josh Downs in his first game back. Debo out multiple weeks. A.J. Brown out multiple weeks. And as we know, Puka and Cooper Kupp right now are both on injured reserve. And I just want to give a quick fact check to that Pat Mayo, who was just talking, that Cooper Kupp is not on injured reserve and could come back inside the 4 weeks, as was just reported. Additionally, for the wide receiver rankings, I just found out that my video was frozen. So just for the wide receiver rankings, you'll see the rankings move on the one side of the screen, but I am going to be frozen, like looking down for the rest of it if you're watching the video version. That gets rectified at the tight ends, the quarterbacks, or whatever, but yeah, it's just... It's a stupid pose, but the rankings will be there for you, and the audio works fine, okay? Back to the show. So we jump over to the wide receiver rankings. CeeDee Lamb is number 1, Justin Jefferson, Rashee Rice, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors in his 50% team target share, albeit in a very bad matchup against the Browns. It's just, if you're going to have that much volume, you're going to be a must start every week. Ditto with Devontae Adams at number 7. Garrett Wilson, I did bump down a little bit. Christian Gonzalez has been so good in pass coverage so far this season. Like, he limited DK Metcalf to basically nothing when they played last week. The problem for the Patriots was he didn't press and play against DK Metcalf on every snap. In the times when he was not on him and did not follow him across the field, DK went absolutely off in the game. You can see the times that Gonzalez was on Metcalf. It's when Jackson Smith and Jigba went off against the Patriots. So teams are throwing away from Christian Gonzalez right now. He's already entered that tier of elite cornerback. So if he ends up matched up with Garrett Wilson, you hope it's not in the red zone and Garrett Wilson can get his touchdowns. But I would actually probably expect to see fewer targets for Garrett Wilson in this game. But he's still the primary receiver on the Jets. Aaron Rodgers looks his way in the most important moments. He's going to get his. He would be higher than this in a normal week if it wasn't for that Gonzalez factor. He's still number 8 in the rankings, though. Then you have Tyreek and Jamar Chase. I don't have Higgins in the rankings right now. Chase probably wouldn't move at this point in a pretty soft matchup against a terrible Commanders defense. If Chase can't get it done this week, we got real problems with Jamar Chase and the Cincinnati Bengals in general. So you're going to play Jamar Chase, and with Tyreek, what are you going to do? You took him in the first round. You may have taken him first overall for all I know. Do you really have 3 better options at receiver than Tyreek Hill? And it's not like Tua was the world's best quarterback. Like Skylar Thompson, maybe not as good, but maybe as good. And if he knows what's good for him, where his bread is buttered, he's going to be forcing the ball to Tyreek Hill as much as possible. So that's where I would be going with Tyreek Hill. I'm not benching him, put it that way. After that, Devonta Smith, who is he's like Jalen Waddle in a weird way, where he is far more equipped to be the number 2 than the number 1, where he's probably, in all honesty, a top 25 receiver in football. He's just so much better at being the number 2 than the number 1. So without A.J. Brown around, fantasy-wise, he's just going to get so much volume, and you hope he catches a touchdown. Hell, he could have had 2 on Monday night. Had he have had 2, the Eagles probably win that game. But it's not going to be a high volume, and something's off with Hurts. And when A.J. Brown isn't out there, their offense does look a little bit off. Maybe it was 1 week. Maybe the secondary of the Falcons was a lot better. Who knows? But the Saints have been no slouch so far this season either. Marvin Harrison Jr. wouldn't expect to see what he did last week every week, but he's the lowest end of wide receiver 1 this week at number 12. Drake London, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Brandon Ayuk gets the bump back up to 16. Let's earn that contract now with no McCaffrey and no Debo out there, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. Let's figure it out. DK at 17 against Miami. Zay Flowers giving Chris Olave another week before I start ranking Shaheed ahead of him. They haven't needed to use Olave at all in the first 2 weeks. They've been blowing teams out. We'll see if they blow out the Eagles again, but I would expect them to have to use Chris Olave a little bit more this time around. George Pickens against the Chargers. Shakir, who has been one of the most efficient receivers in football so far, going up against Jacksonville. Buffalo's only favored by 5.5 points. If they do start running away with it, that's bad news for Shakir and everyone in the passing game, like we saw last Thursday night against Miami. James Cook did his damage on the ground and a little bit through the air on that first touchdown, and then Josh Allen just didn't need to pass the rest of the game. So if that happens, he's going to be bad. If it's a game where they actually do need to pass, Shakir is the number one target in this offense right now. It's the same reason I'm not completely panicked about Dalton Kincaid so far. After him, it's Shaheed because he's just the best deep threat in football right now. Non-Tyreek Hill category, it is then Shaheed. He has the most touchdowns over 40 yards the past 2 seasons of anyone not named Tyreek Hill. DJ Moore gets one more shot for me at number 23. If he can't do it again this week, that's 3 weeks in a row that he's not. Is he benchable? Yes. He is benchable if you do not have the faith in DJ Moore and this offense against the Colts. But he can do too much by himself, even on a bubble screen, make a guy miss, and with that speed and size, he can just bowl you over. So I am willing to give him one more shot. And frankly, when you start seeing the names below him, it's a bunch of guys who are underperforming or a bunch of guys that you're like, about. So like Jalen Waddle at number 25, Jackson Smith and Jigba at 24. Like Lockett could be better than JSN this week. Who knows? Or JSN could be better than Metcalf. That's always going to be the triple, the 3-sided die that you have with the Seahawks passing offense right now. But I go Metcalf, JSN, then Lockett. But they're all pretty good plays. They're all top 30 plays this week. It's probably not going to end up working out that way because it never does, but that is how you have to project out the opportunity for them. When they have good games, they tend to have really good games. When they have bad games, they tend to have really bad games. But in the face of some of these other players who are just lacking upside right now, I'd roll the dice in that situation. Waddle, I bumped down more than Hill. You can think about benching Waddle, but again, I don't think that Skylar Thompson is actually that big of a drop-off from Tua at the moment. Maybe week 1, week 2. You can go back and look at some of Skylar Thompson's other starts, and what you'll notice is he had that game against the Bills in the playoffs where they just ran all over Buffalo and almost won, but his 3 other starts in the NFL have been against elite defenses. He played the Jets twice and the Patriots once. Those are elite pass defenses on top of everything else as well. So against the Seahawks, good defense, not elite defense. Skylar Thompson may be able to do a little more in the air than maybe you expect going into the week. After Lockett, it's Diggs, Jamison Williams, Calvin Ridley, then Tank Dell. Starting to get worried about Tank Dell, but again, who are these guys aren't you worried about? Is it Amari Cooper at 31, the guy with the most targets and 5 catches and 5 fantasy points? That's not great. The opportunity is still there for him. And it's against the Giants, so if there's ever going to be a week, this would hopefully be the week for him. But you're not feeling good about it. You're not feeling good about Terry McLaurin. You're definitely not feeling good about Andre Yoshivas. Yashmash! If he doesn't catch his 2 touchdowns on 2 catches, he has 0 points in the game. But, he did do that, so he continues to run up here. And again, these are the without T. Higgins rankings. Now, if T. Higgins does play, I would probably slot him in right here. Probably just behind Calvin Ridley. I'd probably put him at number 30 in the rankings because coming off the hamstring injury, you would expect not 100%. Hamstring and being soft tissue does have a reoccurrence issue going, and he might not run a full complement of routes. So I'd like him more currently than where Yoshivas is at, but I wouldn't have him as high as I normally would in his first week back, albeit in a really soft matchup. But that could be a circumstance too, where if the Bengals jump out to a 14-0 lead at half or 21-3 at half, that they just say, you know what, T, you look good. Why don't you sit down, rest out that hamstring? We're going to need you for later on in the season. So there's always that concern about T. Higgins as well. After Yoshivas, it's Michael Pittman. Xavier Worthy comes in at number 35 against Atlanta. Then we're into the Jags receivers. Gabe Davis actually played the most of the Jags receivers a week ago, and Christian Kirk took a big drop off. Now, they didn't look good doing it last week, so maybe they'll revert back to what used to work for them before, and that was Christian Kirk, but it's tough. Even though the Bills secondary, pretty soft, you can throw on them. Kirk at 36, Brian Thomas at 37, then Quentin Johnson at number 38. If it wasn't such a tough matchup against Pittsburgh, he would be higher than this, probably in the low 20s, but I do not like the matchup at all for Quentin Johnson. After that, it's Juwan Jennings against the Rams. It's Deontay Johnson with Andy Dalton now playing. I think Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen, the vets, crisp route runners, get a bump from the more accurate and more poised Andy Dalton. If he can trust that those two guys are going to be where they're going to be running the routes, which is kind of both their calling cards, Andy Dalton will be able to get them the ball. And the offensive, the defensive line for the Raiders. Quite good. Max Crosby's there. They're going to generate pressure. So getting the ball out quickly is going to be a key. So I have Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen over Xavier Legette this week because I don't know how much on the same page that he is going to be. If he doesn't have command of the routes that he's running or being in that spot at the time that he needs to be, typical rookie stuff, nothing really on him, I would go with the vets week 1 with Andy Dalton versus the other guys. But I do expect that offense to improve. Like improve that they're going to win games. I wouldn't go that far, but not be completely incompetent at the same time like we've seen through 2 weeks under Bryce Young. Deontay Johnson, then Juwan Jennings filling in. He's been all right through 2 weeks anyway. Now he's going to get even more run. Ronnie Bell might end up being the next guy up. Probably wouldn't go that far down the depth chart, but you got Ayuk, you got Jennings, you got Kittle, and Mason. You play those 4 guys, you'd be on your way. They should be all right against the heavily depleted Rams defense right now. Josh Reynolds at number 41. Thielen, aforementioned Thielen. Jerry Jeudy, looked pretty good last week with Watson. Alec Pierce, Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed's going to be awesome when Jordan Love comes back. There's only so much you can do with Malik Willis. Brendan Cooks, Jalen Naylor. This has Jordan Addison out of the rankings right now. Addison would be a little bit higher than this. I'd have Addison in this just probably one spot ahead of Juwan Jennings in his first game back, and Naylor move way down the list. But for the moment, in this matchup against Houston, I have Naylor at number 47. Naylor, hardly knew her. Get him in there if you play in the deepest of leagues. Josh Downs in his first game back at 48. He has the chance to move up if we see the playing time and that rapport with Anthony Richardson resurface this week. Keenan Allen at number 49. Jordan Whittington is the highest ranked of all the Rams receivers. Jake and I spoke about this on Monday and how the breakdown of snaps went for Whittington as soon as Cooper Kupp left the game. It happened in the preseason that he played the Cooper Kupp role in the offense when Cooper Kupp was sitting on the bench. And what did he do in week 2? As soon as Kupp left the game, he ran every single Cooper Kupp route. I don't know if Matt Stafford's going to have any time to throw the ball because they have no offensive linemen left and they're playing in San Francisco, but those little drag routes, sneak routes over the middle, Whittington's going to have ample opportunity to catch those. So I think he is the safest right now of all the Rams receivers. Unfortunately, the offense is so bad that makes him number 50 in the wide receiver rankings at the moment. Gabe Davis, Romeo Doubs, Darnell Mooney, my guy Mooney showing out on Monday night. Wendell Robinson catches touchdowns and somehow finds a way to score fewer than 10 fantasy points. That's always fun. Now he goes against Cleveland. Cortland Sutton, Jalen McMillan, Keon Coleman, Demarcus Robinson, the number 2 I have right now of the Rams receivers, Romadunze and Rashad Bateman. Then we're into Noah Brown. Noah Brown was splitting with Diami Brown last week, who drew the start opposite Terry McLaurin. There was the first week that Noah Brown was active on the Commanders' offense. I think he plays more this week. I think he plays more than Diami Brown, and he really did seem to be the preferred target of Jaden Daniels. He is perfect for what Jaden Daniels wants to do. Buy time, run. He's going to run these short to intermediate routes. He has decent hands, but he's a big body and can do a ton after the catch, and he can really open up the field. And if some of the defenders bite on whatever Jaden Daniels is doing, Brown is the type of player to have those Debo type plays where it's, the 10-yard and in, make one guy miss, and all of a sudden he's off to the races. So the big play potential for Noah Brown is there. I just can't be certain that he ends up playing more than 30% of the snaps. So he's out there 75% of the snaps, and we get that report. He is going up in the wide receiver rankings this week. Once again, if you are new to Underdog, please go use code Mayo right now. Get your deposit bonus. If you are the new customer, you get the Aaron Rodgers free pick for Thursday Night Football. Okay? Tight end injury report for week number 3. Again, you can find all of the rankings and updated injury report in the description in the newsletter link where it says ranks and injury list. That is where you're going to find it, and I'll have it completely updated. Also, I created a list for injuries in that newsletter to follow on Twitter. It's for the fantasy doctors only, just guys from around the internet who have really good, at least prognostication for what's wrong and how long guys are going to be out. I think it's a very valuable list to have if you want to go join that. Again, it's on Twitter. It's free to do. I just compiled people for you. But the rankings, or the injuries themselves, Njoku is expected out. Stefanski has already said that as of Wednesday. Davis Allen and Taysom Hill, I don't know. Davis Allen, it doesn't really matter. Taysom Hill is useful, but he had to go to the hospital with that chest injury. We'll see if he ends up playing. Ditto for Jake Ferguson. I would expect him to go. And with Evan Ingram, if he missed last week, the hamstring injuries just tend to take 2 to 3 weeks. We've seen that with the receivers already. He was close to playing and hurt it just before the game last week against Miami. So or against Miami. Was it against Miami? No, it was Miami in week 1 against the Browns last week that I would just expect him to be out. That's on Monday Night Football. We might not even know by Saturday. I would just make other plans when it came to Evan Ingram. I do not have him in the tight end rankings, but I do have George Kittle at number 1. Me Timbers have been kittled. And without Debo around, I doubt he even needs to block a ton against the Rams. They're big favorites on the road here, so with tight end being as weak as it has been so far this season and no one being good, Kittle, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Hunter Henry. Those 4 have been the guys who have been basically pretty good each of the first 2 weeks. Isaiah Likely is still the highest scoring tight end on the season. He had a horrendous week number 2, so it's going to be hit or miss with all of these guys at the moment. No one has really stepped up, probably except for Brock Bowers, of being kind of the guy that you need to run out every single week. So there's him at Hunter Henry at number 4, the Laporta Potty, Sam Laporta at number 5, Dalton Kincaid, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, and Dallas Goedert are the top 10. Kyle Pitts is at number 11. The Pitts is what he was on Monday night. And you know why? Because he ran fewer routes than Ray McLeod, Darnell Mooney, and Drake London. They were playing 3 wide receiver sets, and Pitts wasn't always on the field for those. He played significantly fewer snaps than those 3 guys. If that's going to be the case, that is curtains for his fantasy value. Unfortunately, tight end sucks, so you're still probably going to have to play him, but I wouldn't expect too much unless that was just a game plan dependent script against Philadelphia, and that changes against Kansas City. Like, am I super worried about Travis Kelce? Yeah. Sure am. What am I going to do? Sit him? No, there's no one good enough to go pick up and play, unfortunately. Colby Parkinson at number 12. I do have Taysom Hill in the rankings. He's at number 13. Maybe Jawan Johnson would get a tick up. If he misses it, I probably don't want a ton to do with that. Pat Freiermuth, Mike Gesicki, Zach Ertz, Hayden Hurst, Johnny Smith, Cole Kmet, and Dalton Schultz. You can play some Tyler Conklin, some Cade Otton, but really right now if you are lucky enough to have a tight end that scores more than 10 points, consider yourself the best player in fantasy at the moment, because that's how bad the tight ends are looking at the moment. Let's shift back to the injury report for the quarterbacks. Bryce Young has been benched. Andy Dalton is starting. Justin Herbert has an ankle injury. He is expected to play in Pittsburgh this week as 2-point dogs to the Steelers. Russell Wilson's probably not even hurt anymore, but it doesn't matter because Justin Fields is starting week 3 against those Chargers at home for the Steelers home opener. Jordan Love is expected out for week 3. If they beat Tennessee this week, you probably don't see him till week 5 and giving him the extra rest. If they lose, you might see him next week in week 4. And Tua has been placed on injured reserve. He's out at least 4 weeks. Skylar Thompson is drawing the start. Tyler Huntley has been signed off the Ravens practice squad for the Dolphins, and if Skylar Thompson ends up flaming out, he might be the guy that they turn to. I mean, guy's a former Pro Bowler. How couldn't you turn to him in this spot? Quarterback rankings for week number 3, I have Lamar Jackson in Dallas, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts might not be like the greatest real-life quarterback. Man, is he good at fantasy. He's just the best. He'll just grind you fantasy points from wherever. And the tush push was working immaculately even again on Monday night. Cust and I got into that big argument on the spread show. People think like we hate each other now. Cust and I are best friends. We don't actually hate each other, but it's fun to yell at each other. That's part of the fun of the show. That's why people watch those sports yelling shows in the morning, I think. But it was a heated debate. Most people side with Cust over me. I completely understand that. But I play to win the game. I don't play to maybe try to put myself into a good spot where they won't score. You have to remember, there's still going to be a minute left with the Falcons getting the ball back anyway. If they did run on 3rd down and they ran a play to a completely wide open guy, the move would have been to tush push twice. I would have went for it on 4th down if that was going to be the play. You run the clock out and then go for it again. It was the kicking the field goal part that I really don't like there. You drew up a play that worked. You should have got a 1st down at the end of the game. You can run up another play for the same thing. And if you just run the tush push twice, it's unstoppable. So you might as well have just done that and run the clock out at the same time. Anyway, Hurts is number 2. Josh Allen is number 3. Kyler Murray is entering that elite level once again. He is number 4 in this matchup with Detroit in Arizona. Then I go CJ Stroud. Patrick Mahomes, getting a little bit like wonky on Mahomes right now. I think there's a clear top 4, then Stroud, then Mahomes. Jaden Daniels, you're just saying he's a big underdog. He's going to run. He's going to throw. And listen, they kicked 7 field goals last week. You turn 2 of those into touchdowns. Jaden Daniels has an awesome fantasy week. So I like that they move the ball better in week 2 than they did in week 1. They're big dogs here against Cincinnati. So, and listen, the Patriots were able to move the ball against the Bengals not so badly in week number 1. Why can't Washington do that on Monday night in week number 3? I just like Daniels as a fantasy asset, and I like him more than Anthony Richardson right now, until he takes one hit and goes down for the season. But as it stands, when they're both healthy-ish, Jaden Daniels I like more than Anthony Richardson. Dak at number 8 against the Ravens. Goff in that Arizona game, it has the highest total of the week. So Cardinals, default Cardinals and Lions, the more you can do that because that's where all of the points are probably going to be. Derek Carr at number 10, buying in a little bit. I'm just waiting for him to take a dump on my fantasy team the moment I really start to believe, but he's been too good not to have him inside the top 10 right now. But he's still a fringy. He doesn't run, and when it doesn't go well, it goes really badly because he doesn't do any of that periphery stuff. Like if you want to start Burrow, Baker, or Anthony Richardson, who I have as the next 3 in the rankings over him, I completely get it. After that, it's Geno. He has 3 receivers I have inside the top 30. He's playing the Dolphins, so let's go. Geno's looked really good through 2 weeks as well. Justin Fields at number 15. Gardner Minshew, the best accuracy quarterback in football, playing the Panthers at number 16. Deshaun at number 17, a weaker matchup against the Giants. But again, he is another guy that doesn't need to do it all with his arm. He rushed for a touchdown last week. He's taken off more often than you probably would have expected Deshaun Watson to. So he's piling up fantasy points with his legs. If he can get anything through the air against the Giants, it's just going to be a boon to your fantasy roster. He is number 17 out of 32 quarterbacks. He's not a must start by any means, but there are guys that people might start who I do actually like him more fantasy-wise over in week number 3. Cousins at 18, Purdy at 19, Darnold at 20, Dalton, Rodgers, Caleb Williams, Matt Stafford. Poor Matt Stafford, man. He has no one to throw to and no offensive line. He can overcome it because he is so skillful, but you might see what you saw against Arizona last week too, and just you can't have that sort of downside in your lineup if that was someone you were relying on. I would play Andy Dalton over Matt Stafford this week. That's just the way it's going to have to be until Matt Stafford can consistently develop a rapport or some of the offensive line ends up coming back. After that, Lawrence, Herbert, Willis, Daniel Jones, Will Levis, Bo Nix, Skylar Thompson, and Jacoby Brissett coming in at number 32. Brissett's probably actually better than that, but this Jets D still weirds me out that they can turn it. He doesn't turn the ball over much. That's kind of the glory of Jacoby Brissett and why this Patriots team has been so good. You have the no turnover quarterback with a good defense that just keeps you in games. Once you're in games, it's the NFL. Flip a coin who's going to win. One kicker hit, one kicker miss, and all of a sudden you're 2-1 and you're leading, or you're at least just behind the Bills in the division going into the weekend. But fantasy wise, if they're going to win, it's going to be like 16-13, which doesn't spell a whole lot of fantasy points for Jacoby Brissett this week. Lastly, we're talking about the defenses, my favorite thing to talk about. I always have my streaming rankings in that free newsletter that I send out on Sunday nights just before the conclusion of Sunday Night Football to give you a head start on the week for your waiver wire of defenses that are owned in fewer than 50% of fantasy leagues right now. And Jake and I also do the breakdown on Monday about our favorite streaming defenses once I re-up that a little bit. So the newsletter is where you can find all of the pickups every week, along with these rankings, the injury report, and a whole bunch of other stuff completely free to do, but Jake and I do go over this, and I go over it in the short video and audio podcast on Monday morning as well. I got the Cleveland Steamers at number 1 against the Giants. Going to be taking a dump all over them at home. Niners at number 2 against that no offensive line Matt Stafford. Bears, Raiders, Jets. Those are the top 5. Raiders against Dalton. Listen, Dalton's no stranger to turnovers at the same time, but it's probably going to be a little bit worse for them. Or maybe it's better because they choose to pass a little bit more because they're not shackled to Bryce Young. More passing attempts means more opportunity for sacks, turnovers, and touchdowns for that fantasy defense. Jets against the Patriots, maybe a bit too high, but I just don't see a lot of points in this game. And if they do jump out to a lead and force Brissett to pass, that is going to be a bonanza of fantasy points. It's just, can the Jets offense score enough points to make the Patriots pass? That's the big question. I think that they have some of the lowest. They actually have a very low floor in this game at number 5, but it's Thursday night. Defenses on Thursday night in general just tend to outperform the Sunday defenses. So short week favors the defense in that spot and weird things happening. Maybe they can score a touchdown. That's why I have the Patriots at number 7. Green Bay is at number 6, in case you were wondering. Will Levis is going to actively try to give you the ball, so you might as well play defenses against him while you can. Patriots, Titans at number 8 against Malik Willis. Colts, Buccaneers. Those are the top 10. Then I have the Saints at home against the Eagles at number 11. Seahawks, Bengals on Monday night against the Commanders. Giants against the Browns. If you're looking for like a no-own defense, listen, Watson reeks. He's going to run a little bit, might be like all right at fantasy. He also might throw three pick sixes here. And the Giants can bring a pass rush, and we've yet to see how healthy that the offensive line for the Browns is going to be. Maybe they get everyone back. Maybe they don't get everyone back. If they don't get everyone back, Watson's going to be under a little bit of duress in this game as well. Not enough, I think, for the Giants to win. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. Probably not. I like the Browns to cover the 6, but they could do some damage defensively, and that's how they could potentially do their scoring. So after the Giants at 14, Chiefs, Texans, Steelers, Chargers, Cowboys, Bills, Miami in Seattle, the Baltimore Ravens, the Carolina Panthers, and Minnesota Vikings. Once again, code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now will get you a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. If you're a new person signing up, you get the free pick on Thursday for Aaron Rodgers, and you get another free pick that everyone who has an Underdog account gets for Sunday for CeeDee Lamb as well. Those rankings will be updated when they need to be updated with injury news, trade news, whatever it might be, new information, practice reports. Those will be updated, so please sign up and bookmark it, and you can return back to that, or you can just check out ProFootballNetwork.com to find them up there on Thursday morning and update it again before the slate actually starts on Sunday evening. Smash a like while you're here, sub to the channel. The spread show is already out. The team-by-team recap is already out. Best bets tomorrow, DraftKings on Friday. Update for all these rankings coming on Saturday. We are back, and I will see you next time.
That Mayo experience.